Will the massive aid package from the EU and the IMF be the long-term fix, do you think, Nouriel?
In my view, it's going to help in the short run. Certainly, finally, the EU got its act together. They were totally behind the curve, both the EU and the ECB, on helping a situation that's becoming totally disorderly with massive contagion from Greece, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, and eventually global consequences. Last week we had the seizure of stock markets in a number of countries, including the United States. In the short term, it's going to help. The markets are rallying. However, the fundamental problem remains. There are 3 or 4 of them. One is politically, can this country do the kind of fiscal adjustment needed? Secondly, while you need to raise taxes and cut spending in the short run, that reduces demand and leads to a more severe recession. So for how long Greece, Spain, Portugal can accept a recession? Another year, another 2 years. Eventually, you cannot ask people austerity if there is no resumption of growth. 3, they have public debt problem, but in many of these countries there are also private debt problems because of the housing bubble, for example, in Ireland or in Spain. So you have private debt liabilities you have to reduce. And finally, this country lost in the last few years a lot of competitiveness. Politically, asking for austerity is going to become increasingly difficult. So there's a whole set of things that this particular rescue package doesn't resolve. The fundamental problems of public debt, of private debt, of growth, of competitiveness, that will take years to resolve.
Then why spend the money? Then why come to the aid of Greece? Why not allow Greece to default? Should that have been the policy move, perhaps?
Well, Greece, like all the other countries, need to do structural reform and fiscal retrenchment, but those countries like Greece that, in my view, have a level of deficit and debt that realistically and politically cannot be reduced, in addition to doing the painful adjustment, require also a restructuring of their debts.
But it would not have been the right move to allow Greece to default?
A disorderly default will be dangerous because the losses for financial institutions in Europe, 3/4 of the public debt of Greece is held outside of Greece. Sure. The contagion and domino effect in terms of collapse of Spain, Portugal, and Italy will be severe, but you can have a controlled restructuring of the public debt of Greece. It has been done in the last decade in a number of emerging markets like Ukraine, Uruguay, Pakistan, Dominican Republic. Is a more friendly way of restructuring the debt than outright default like Russia or Argentina. So I'm in favor of a coercive restructuring, but it's one that is orderly managed as opposed to an orderly default and collapse.
You've called Greece the canary in the coal mine, but when you look at the other PIG nations, you look at Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Spain, which is at the biggest risk now outside of Greece?
Well, in the short run, I see that the financial difficulties in Portugal and in Spain are the most severe. Ireland is doing more fiscal adjustment. Italy has a large stock of public debt, but their deficit, relatively speaking, is, unquote, only 5% of GDP as opposed to 13% like Greece. So they are all needing fiscal consolidation, but the degree is different. In some ways, I would argue that Spain is potentially a bigger problem than Greece for 4 reasons. First of all, the unemployment rate in Spain today is 20%. In Greece is only 10%. Secondly, Spain had a huge housing boom and bubble has gone bust, and now the collateral damage for the real economy is severe. 3, many of the financial institutions and banks and saving banks in Spain are now bust, insolvent, and the fiscal cost of bailing them out is going to be huge, another burden for the public sector. And 4, in the boom years of the housing bubble, the loss of competitiveness of Spanish industry was even bigger because wages were growing very fast compared to productivity. So in some dimensions, actually, Spain is in worse shape than Greece. Now, Greece was on the verge of the abyss today, while Spain is still a couple of miles behind. They need to do, however, a lot of adjustment in Spain, fiscal and otherwise they could end up like Greece.
Is the worst behind the EU for now, at least, because you've argued that financial crises, whether they are what we experience in this country or what is happening across Europe now, are like hurricanes, right? They subside and then they gain strength and then they hit again.
Well, what happened last week was that this storm again happened and hit again. Now there is this financial support to try to prevent the storm from becoming worse. We'll see. In the short run, there is going to be support. However, the fundamental problem of deficits, of debt, public and private, of growth and of competitiveness, and of structural reform needs are going to remain. And unless these countries are going to do the necessary sacrifices in the next few months, the market concerns are going to resurge again in spite of this support package.